Excellent.
Let's talk about Metasploit framework. Oh, we got a gaggle of new modules this time around. 4 slides worth, in fact. So let's get to it. We've got a couple of new modules from our own WVU targeting Pulse Secure VPN, which are based on research from Orange Tsai and Me Chang. The first module grew from an initial PR via contributor Justin Wagner and exploits a file disclosure vulnerability in Pulse Secure's VPN server. This module will download any credentials, hashes, and sessions from a server, allowing an attacker to authenticate to the VPN, potentially as an administrator.
Damn.
Yeah, a manual mode is also supported to download arbitrary files if you wish. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And he thought that was good. But the second module uses a valid administrator session via the file disclosure module we just mentioned to authenticate a post-auth remote root RCE against the server, bypassing the software's application whitelisting by using the env command. The module can pop a root shell or run an arbitrary command on a vulnerable target. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How common are those modules? I guess those pieces of software for secure VPN.
I don't
Also,
actually know.
secure seems to show up on a lot of.
They're high-value targets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool. And from contributor B. Coles comes a couple of new modules targeting FusionPBX, open source telephony software, both requiring authentication and achieving command execution as the web server user. First module targets the command section of the vulnerable application where users with the exec view permissions or better can execute arbitrary system commands. And the second module targets the exec.php file within the operator panel of the vulnerable application, which permits users with operator panel view permissions or better to execute arbitrary system commands via the FreeSWITCH event socket interface. More on that on the next slide, which is now. All right, so again, as promised, 4 slides of new modules. These here are about execution. From contributor Steve Embling comes a module targeting vulnerable versions of Net-SNMPd. Relying on the service user having read-write access, this module supports SNMP protocol versions 1 and 2C and uses SNMP extension MIBs to enable and achieve remote code execution on the target. It's nice. Contributor B. Coles added a module which can achieve command execution on a target via leftover rConfig installation files, specifically via PHP file that can be utilized to execute arbitrary commands as the web server user. A good reminder that cleaning up unneeded files is not a bad thing. And related to his FusionPBX work we just mentioned a minute ago, contributor B. Coles also provided a module targeting the event socket interface of FreeSWITCH, an open source software-defined telecom stack. The event socket service is enabled by default on a default port with the default password, which this module utilizes to access the system API command and execute code on a vulnerable target. Very cool. Our own W. Chen added a new module targeting Bludit, an open source content management system. From vulnerable versions of Bludit, this module will authenticate and then abuse the UUID parameter in the image upload feature in order to save a malicious payload on the target, and then use a custom .htaccess file to bypass the file extension check to then achieve remote code execution. Pretty slick. Rounding out this slide, contributor ScanU92 provided a module targeting another open source content management system, CMS Made Simple. Taking advantage of an object injection vulnerability present in the Design Manager module of CMS Made Simple, this new Metasploit module can achieve code execution via a user account that has designer permissions. Nice. And some new modules focused on escalation. Contributor Stus swung by with a new PrivEsc module targeting data protector software from Micro Focus, formerly HPE software. Vulnerable versions of Data Protector allow this new module to exploit the trusted path environment variable of the SUID binary OmniResolve, leading to privilege escalation. While this vulnerability was patched in version 10.40, many earlier versions of Data Protector may be vulnerable. Contributor DZ Flack added a new module targeting Xorg X11 server on AIX for local privilege escalation. Based on the OpenBSD X11 Xorg exploit, this module has modifications to ensure it works on AIX and has been tested on AIX versions 7.1 and 7.2 and is expected to also work against AIX 6.1 if you run into those AIX targets. And rounding out the slide, contributor Tim Wright, with some collaboration with Hoodie, created a new module for achieving PrivEsc via the Android Janus APK signature bypass, which allows installation of a payload into a V1 signed Android package without any change to the package's original signature. Users of this module with an existing session on an Android target can select a suitable app that is already installed on the target, This module will download it, inject a payload into it, upload it back to the target, and initiate an application update. Once the Android user accepts the pop-up to update their already installed app, the injected APK will be installed, and in its session as the target application will be created when the app is run. It's pretty cool stuff.
So this is not the user actually interacting with the Android phone to delete the app, old app, and it just does it by itself.
The user, all the user has to do is accept that there's an app update. There's a pop-up that says accept the update for an app they already have installed. So hopefully just like flies under the radar, they accept it. Next time the app's run, in the session. Yeah. The thing about this is this was a vulnerability that got patched, I think, at the end of 2017. So they moved over to a V2 signing system, but I believe V1 is still compatible. So you may still find some apps signed with that.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And last, but certainly not least, of our module list today, Contributor Hoodie came through on a huge password cracking overhaul that's been about 7 months in the making. Some of the highlights include support for Hashcat, as well as identifying additional hash types and additional application support when analyzing stored credentials. In addition to a few brand new cracking modules, specifically Crack OSX and Crack Web App, some of the existing password cracking modules, as well as framework library support, were migrated and in some cases consolidated from being John the Ripper specific to a more generalized cracking naming convention, hence the list of password cracking modules you see here. And Hoodie didn't forget any of the module docs either. I love that guy. Big props to Hoodie for this large lift.
All right.
And because we're not all about modules, we've got other stuff going on too. We've got some enhancements and features to cover. Contributor Zero Sum removed the syscall hooking in the Bluetooth exploit module, adapting it for targets with the Meltdown patch installed. This should improve module reliability for the many systems out there which have been patched for Meltdown. Appreciate that update. Our own WView updated the HTTP client mixin to allow modules the option for receiving partial responses from an HTTP request when the server times out before sending the total response link and as advertised in the response headers, which is nice flexibility. Also from WView came an update to improve vulnerable page detection in the Cold Fusion RDS auth bypass module, which was formerly known as the Cold Fusion RDS module, which also relocated to more appropriate directory and framework. And Contributor vCols updated a large handful of local exploit modules with reliability and stability traits. We like those additions. Good stuff. Continuing our list of enhancements and features, Contributor Hoodie hooked us up with module docs for 2 Android Post modules that were lacking them. Great stuff. Contributor CNote and updated the description of the threads option and scan your modules to clarify that only one thread is created for target. We'd like to appreciate that clarity. And in an effort to keep our framework banners honest, Contributor Jeff McJunkin updated the null pointer deref banner to reflect that we're actually on Metasploit 5 now. Always good to be honest. And speaking of banners, rounding out our list here, Contributor vCols did us a solid by updating the max size for ASCII art banners from a paltry 16K to a robust 64K.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Well, and here you go. In case y'all missed it, for you PC history buffs out there, his PR title was priceless. So,
he also has a fantastic collection of extra Metasploit banners on his account too, if you want to check them out.
He does. They are neat, and there's a lot of them. Yeah, it's super cool. And rounding off this whole thing, some bug fixes. Our own B-Waters fixed the delimiter on commands when using PowerShell payloads. Great. Contributor Layderv updated a handful of auxiliary modules to use the myworkspace_ID variable instead of myworkspace.id, avoiding an exception when no database is connected. Always like that stuff. Contributor Tim Wright updated the MSF Post Linux compile mixin to use the correct failure class, which will now provide the user with a useful error message when compilation fails instead of just a generic name error message. And for details on recent framework activity, you can always check out the weekly Metasploit wrap-up blog posts at blog.rapid7.com. And as always, a huge thanks to all who helped make Metasploit better through their contributions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate y'all. All right. Now,
So this should be a fairly quick one. Yeah, like I said, it's just a simple exploit of SNMP. Sorry. So this is the kind of config you'd need for it to be exploitable. You essentially just need this read-write community string here. You need to be aware of this name. I've just called it private, and then you need to have access from the computer you want to run the exploit from. So the exploit itself leverages the command stager. So you have the option of using either echo or printf, wget or curl. I think maybe one other option. I'm going to run with wget here because it seems to be the fastest. Just run that. Sometimes it won't work for some reason. I haven't figured it out yet. But if you run it again, you see we can get the session opened. Just take a second. Oh, sorry, I forgot the command to show stuff on the computer.
Sysinfo.
Sysinfo, that's it. Sorry, this is a very last minute demo. Yeah, that's the exploit. There's not a whole lot to it.
So does a command injection over SNMP to the SNMP server if you have read-write condition is like an unescaped command execution?
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Okay, cool. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
And this one was patched, but what do you suppose kind of likelihood of someone finding this one in the wild?
Has this been patched? Because I just on my VM installed the latest SNMP and it worked right out of the box.
Oh, fantastic! Well, that's definitely very interesting. All right, cool.
Crushed it.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you, Dean.
Excellent.